Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. The question is going to be now, with what happened in the last 24 hours in Gaza, what is the future of Gaza? Can it be rebuilt? Can it be reoccupied? Very timely for us to have back with us today Jonathan Feldstein. He's the president of Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to rebuild bridges between Jews and Christians. Jonathan is the host of the Inspiration from Zion podcast and the author of the book entitled Israel the Miracle. He's working with Christian leaders all over the world to realize true peace in Gaza, and details which can be found in the solutionspeaceingaza.com. And that is the one of the websites. There's a picture of the book. He has a couple of websites, genesis123.co, and he has solutionsforpeaceingaza.com. Jonathan, good to see you again, friend. How are you?
Harry, it's always a delight. I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Sorry I didn't catch up with you at the NRB, but couldn't do it this year. All right. Well, listen, the last 24 hours is a big deal. What's your take?
Look, it's very sad, and people are talking about resuming the war, but the truth of the matter is it's not a resumption. It's the ongoing war. The war never stopped, and what we've known since October 7th of 2023 is that this is really, it is, and unfortunately it must be, an unrelenting war. It's not a war in which we have the leisure to kick the can down the road. And the last 24 hours came as a surprise to me to a certain degree. But part of the surprise is that we haven't been more forceful in the last few weeks, when Hamas has not released any hostages, is toying with the idea of releasing the last living American hostages and the bodies, I believe, of 4 other Americans who are being held hostage in Israel. And somehow, I mean, I think if whoever came up with the phrase "push comes to shove," this is that push, and we have to swiftly defeat militarily. But as you alluded to in the intro, ultimately it's not just a military defeat. It goes to the core of an ideology, in their case, one that's jihadist. It's a death-worshipping cult, and that's the nature of our solution for peace in Gaza.
Okay. Do you think, Jonathan, that Israel, the leadership there, is maybe changing its mind about holding out for hostages?
I don't know that anyone's changing mind, but changing strategy. There are still, if I'm not mistaken, 59 hostages who are being held. A third to a half of whom are believed to be alive. That we know that they've been suffering tremendous psychological and physical torture, as well as deprivation of any medical service and basic food stuff. So that's a big issue. The question, I think, is ultimately tactic. If we're just going to rely on Hamas to realize that they need to negotiate, and by being good negotiating partners, we'll come up with a resolution and eventually, hopefully, bring all of the hostages out of Gaza. I think that we've proven in the last year and a half, if we didn't know it before, that that's kind of a foolish premise. So if that's the case, then there's no alternative, unfortunately, but to turn up the pressure physically.
One of the reports here was that the strike last night did not include areas that they believe the hostages to be. That's a little bit of intel that I didn't realize. They actually know where they are?
Yes, I believe that is the case, and I've interviewed on my podcast a number of times the father of one of the hostages, and he's indicated that there's significant intelligence as to where, and part of the reason, and everyone listening now, everyone following us should know, if they only take this away from the conversation, the fact that we haven't gone in and been able to rescue the hostages is because they are being held in very populated areas where necessarily any military action would create civilian casualties in Gaza. And while, of course, there have been, Israel, more than any country in the world, has been very, very careful about not not putting civilians in harm's way, albeit that Hamas is using them as human shields. So yeah, we know where many of the hostages are, maybe all of them. I don't know if we know where all of the bodies are of the half to two-thirds who are dead. And it's scary to say and very sad to say, maybe we'll never see all of those bodies. But there's a lot of intelligence, and a lot more intelligence than we're even aware of.
Do you think, Jonathan, I know we can't get into the minds of a terrorist, but on the other hand, do you think Hamas is maybe beginning to realize win or lose, they're done? Whether they release
No,
the
I don't.
hostages or keep the hostages, they're done?
No, they're not done. And the reason why is Hamas is an ideology. They're not many of their leaders, and again, at least 5 or 6 significant leaders who remained in Gaza were killed in the overnight strikes here last night. But Hamas is also governed out of Qatar, where their leaders live in 7-story hotels. And Hamas also exists out my backyard here in Judea and Samaria. So physically, the leadership may be getting crushed in Gaza specifically, but as an ideology and all around the rest of the world, no, they're still alive and standing and waiting for the next opportunity. But the other piece is, because they're a death cult, Perry, they don't care if they die, because they believe, according to Islam, that they're going to receive a reward of going to paradise and 72 virgins as martyrs. So, I mean, if that's not misogynistic enough and a good enough reason why they need to be defeated, we know that it's an ideology, and we know that the reality is, when they die, they win, and when we die, they win. So we just have to make sure that there are more casualties on their side than on ours, and defeat them.
Well said. Do you think they're still being supplied easily through Egypt?
That's a great question, and the answer is probably not as easily. And certainly they don't have the military supplies that they had a year and a half ago. There was a rocket that was launched from Gaza about a week and a half ago. That was surprising to me. There's still combat, and I can't speak to whom, but I have friends and people who I know who are now down in the theater operating. And if I were there right now, if I were to take my computer and bring you down there with me, I have no doubt we would hear plenty of gunfire, because while many of the leaders have been eliminated and much of their bigger equipment, they have a lot of equipment that they and still. And by the way, we were talking about intelligence a moment ago. There was intelligence, and maybe that's why this attack took place when it did, that Hamas, believe it or not, was preparing for another October 7th style attack recently.
Whoa. Do you think there was any impact by the recent attack against the Houthis in Yemen in the last 48 hours?
I think that there are a lot of people in places in the world where heads are spinning a little bit. I think that also includes Iran, the Houthis. I'm so grateful that the U.S. has stepped up now, what it seems like for the first time, rather than individual targets, but on a significant tactical basis. The Houthis yet are threatening, and I know they have the weapons, and at a moment's notice they could shut down all of Israeli airspace and send, I don't know, 3/4 of Israelis to the bomb shelters, as they've done multiple times over the past year and a half. So the defeat of the Houthis, the limitation of the ability from Yemen to attack Israel for once, for one, is certainly limiting the fuel in the tank of Hamas and the other Iranian proxies. And that's all a good thing. The proxies need to be defeated, but this is for a bigger conversation, and I think we've had it before, is that ultimately the mothership, the head of the octopus, also needs to be defeated. And if reports are correct that the U.S. has been sending spy satellites or drones close to Iranian airspace, to me that's encouraging, and even if it's only used as a threat.
Well, doesn't the attack on the Houthis send a clear signal to Iran?
It does. It's a question of how much Iran wants to continue to take responsibility. And there's no question that the U.S. has abilities. U.S. and Israel have abilities. And there's also no question that even the Saudis, who we don't have peace with, would love to see the Iranian Islamic regime defeated, because they're no less a threat to Saudi Arabia. In fact, perhaps even more of a threat. So the message to Iran is certainly that there is a, a punch. The carrot comes with a stick. But I personally, and you know me well enough, I'm not a warmonger. I just, my whole kind of worldview has changed in the past year and a half, that rather than negotiating with terrorists and negotiating with evil, I just believe it has to be eliminated.
Some said that Houthis are just a bunch of pirates. Now, I understand that they've gone after a lot of ships in the shipping lane there, but they seem to be a little bit more organized and more equipped than just the average pirate.
Well, it's a great point. Pirates, from my previous years as a child dressing up for Halloween in America, or studying history, pirates look for capturing stuff, gold, other valuables, and maybe taking hostages. What the Houthis are doing is they've now controlled shipping through the Red Sea, shipping through the Suez Canal, which has a tremendous devastating economic impact on Egypt, and a devastating economic impact on the rest of us, where our goods coming from Asia going to the North America or vice versa are now being marked up 15, 20, 25%, because ships have to go around the entire continent of Africa. So it's more than just stealing stuff. It's more than just commandeering ships. It's with a terrorist ideology, and the terrorists are armed. I mean, it's Yemen. It's one of the most backward countries in the world. Why on earth does anyone in Yemen need intercontinental ballistic missiles, which they fire? And it's so noteworthy that they can shoot one, not 100, not 300 like Iran did twice in the past year, but they can shoot one and shut down Israeli airspace. All the airlines, Delta, United, and all the other international airlines that are just now starting to come back, will turn around and fly away and shut down for months. And that has also a tremendous terrorist component to it. So I would say that they're much more than pirates. They're just another Islamic jihadist proxy of Iran.
Do you know, Jonathan, how damaged they were in this recent attack?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I know that the last attack that Israel conducted a few months ago, 2, maybe 3 months ago, after some incident where they shot intercontinental missiles at us, were pretty damaging. But I am not sure yet the nature of the depth of the damage from the U.S.
Was there also a side, if I can use the term, side attack on Syria during the same time frame?
Israel has attacked certain outlets, and I just read online that's been ongoing in southern Syria. There's a lot going on in Syria. It's not just Israel attacking. What's also interesting and ironic, it's not interesting, it's horrific that the current Islamic regime in Syria over the last week and a half has slaughtered something like 1,000 Alawites and Christians in some of the most disgusting ways. But also they are now fighting against Hezbollah, which is telling me that they're no longer only based in Lebanon, and they're not only not weakened, but they're coming across the border in Syria to exert some sort of influence. So Syria is a big mess, and I've said this for many months now, since December, when the Assad regime fell, is all it's going to take is for all of the conflicting parties in Syria to continue to fight, and then eventually someone's going to say, well, let's get the idea to attack Israel because they're the common enemy, and that will at least deflect some of the domestic fighting.
So interesting. All right, let me take a quick break. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, Jonathan has a couple of websites, genesis123.co. There's the picture of that landing page, and check out the other one, solutionsforpeaceingaza.com. You can check out that website, and we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. It's such an honor to have back with us Jonathan Feldstein. He's the president of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians. He's very informed, very involved. He has a couple of websites, genesis123.co, and the other one, solutionsforpeaceingaza.com. And Jonathan, again, thank you for your time. I know it's in the evening there, so thank you for giving us some of your evening time. Your book, Israel the Miracle, certainly stands out that there is clearly a biblical, spiritual oversight to all that's going on there in the Middle East. And it looks like at the end of the day, if you take Hezbollah, you take Hamas, you take Houthis, you take now what's going on in Syria, and you take Iran, and their hate not only for Israel, but for the United States. This is clearly a Judeo-Christian versus Islam battle. And I don't know, do you think Christians in the West understand this?
No, I don't think most Christians in the West do understand that, unfortunately. It's very awkward in the West to even speak about enemies and battles, and these are uncomfortable things for us. But I do think that since October 7th of 23, more Christians do understand that and are speaking in as strong terms as I am. But Jews and Christians worship the same God. He's our creator. He is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He is the God who established covenants that are everlasting, and that's what brings us together. Islam worships a single God, but even if it's just a name in Arabic called Allah, he's a God of hate. He's a God of vengeance, and there's no peace involved unless it's peace through the sword. So we're very divergent, and I know it's not popular in America to be called that they call Islamophobic, but the truth of the matter is, if I remember my Latin and Greek from high school, it's a legitimate word. It's a phobia. It's very legitimate, unfortunately, to be afraid of Islam in the West because it's not the religion of peace.
All right, so can there ever be peace in Gaza if Hamas is allowed to remain?
No. No, there can't be. But it's not only Hamas. I want to just share quickly, yesterday here in my office, which you can see in the back serves as a guest room, my 6-year-old grandson slept over last night. He was afraid to sleep downstairs in the bedroom in which he normally sleeps because he was going to be by himself for a while. And he's only 6. He's only in first grade. But first graders are real smart, and they know what's going on. And as soon as about 4 weeks ago, when the two beautiful little Bibas boys, the redheaded boys, 9 months and 4 years old, were returned in coffins and buried, he heard about it, and he doesn't know what's going on. So by the same token, he's afraid of being alone in a room and we had that with my youngest son too, who's now 19, during a previous conflict. But by the same token, when people in Gaza are raising their children with the ideology that is this radical Islam, where their purpose is jihad and destruction of Jews and Christians, who they refer to both of us as infidels and filthy, the only answer is, yes, of course we can defeat them militarily, but the answer is to change their ideology. And that goes to the website that you've mentioned a few times, and to what I've been promoting. And I just sort of laugh at God for giving me this idea that we need, through solutionforpeaceingaza.com, we need to have 100,000 to 200,000 Christians who go into Gaza to work and help with a true, genuine, loving rebuild, but also do so by showing showing unconditional love to the Gazans and giving them a relationship with the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And I believe that only through changing that ideology, which is rooted in Hamas, but is so prevalent throughout the Gazan society, throughout Palestinian Arab society, that that's the only way that we're actually going to ever see peace.
Do you think that could be accomplished through a multinational approach?
Oh, it has to be through a multinational approach. My contention is that Egypt just came out with a budget to rebuild Gaza, $53 billion. That's a lot of money. If someone smarter than I can do the math, you take 2.3 million and divide it into 53 billion, and you come up with a lot of money. That's a nice down payment on an individual mortgage, and that's per individual, not per family. So it must be a multinational approach. But I believe that after all of the destruction, and I don't mean just in the last year and a half, I'm talking about over the last decades, over the last 100 years since the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Hamas is an ideological descendant. I think that those people and countries who are going to invest in this must look for true solutions, not just to dump $53 billion into a society that's going to have radical Islam rooted in everything that they do, raising their 6-year-old sons and daughters with the ideology that they have to kill us, that that's their sole purpose in life and living life as victims. There are many biblical examples of Gentiles living alongside and among the Jewish people. My goodness, forget what President Trump said about Gaza being able to become a Riviera. Just by being attached to Israel, Gaza can be one of the most prosperous societies, even without the oil and gas that the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait and Bahrain and the Saudis have. They can become more prosperous just by living alongside us peacefully.
That's so beautifully said. Do you have any idea of the Palestinians that are in Gaza that are trapped by what has happened to them versus those who support what's happening to them?
It's hard to say. Some 80% of Gazans voted for Hamas. That's on the record. And Hamas came in and hijacked Gaza in 2005 by kicking out 2007, by kicking out the Palestinian Authority in what was a tremendously bloody revolution that took place then. It's been posited, and you hear on the media, at least here to some degree, that Gazans are cursing Hamas, that they realize that their suffering has come from Hamas. I hope that that's true. But they're also living, it's probably, if we look at the worst of the Godfather-type movies, mafia-type movies, it's a worse mafia, because it's not just that they'll go in and kill you if you disagree. They're using people in Gaza as human shields, and they can't even speak out. So what needs to happen, the people who are yelling free, free Palestine and free Gaza, that's true. But it's free Gaza from Hamas is what needs to happen. And the irony in this, which is why I sort of laugh at God in this instance for giving me the idea to run with and sort of mandating me on the solution for peace in Gaza, is that other than the fact that I'm an Orthodox Jew, I'm more pro-Palestinian Arab than those people on the university campuses and hijacking public squares across America and the rest of the world, because I actually want to see peace. I want to see their 6-year-old children grow up, and at 19, when my grandson is in the army in 13 years, and he will be, that they should be aspiring to be in the best technology classes ever, learning Hebrew and Arabic and English and any other language computer-wise, that they can be part of the wealth, the breadth. In Ezekiel 36, God speaks, the prophecy is that the land will blossom again when the Jewish people have returned. And we think of that correctly as the trees and the physical land. But the blossoming that has come forth in the last almost 78 years since Israel was reborn with Jewish autonomy in the state of Israel, we've seen so much prosperity. And I really do pray that 2 million Gazans will grasp that and run with it, and that in a couple of years, I can drive 50 miles this direction and go to the beach in Gaza and get a kosher hamburger. That's what will be my indication of actual peace.
That's beautiful. One last question before I run out of time.
Sure.
We talked often about Iran and the head of the snake being cut off, and there's certainly clear warnings now that this administration in the United States is heading in that direction, probably with the support of Israel or being led by Israel. It looks like something against Iran is inevitable. I'm sure that impact will be significant on Hamas, right?
The impact will be very significant on Hamas, and that's why it needs to happen. It'll be a significant impact on all of the terror proxies of Iran. I'm not sure that it's inevitable. I hope it's inevitable because it's certainly necessary. An octopus can regenerate its tentacles, but once you cut off the head of the octopus, all of the rest of the octopus will die, and that's what needs to happen. And I have a good friend who's my friend and partner with our Root and Branch program that people can get information about, where we're bringing Christians to harvest olives in Israel. She's an Iranian-born Christian who spent 9 months in prison under a death sentence in Tehran for becoming a Christian in Iran 20 years ago. And we're trying to work to restore friendship between Iran and Israel and the Jewish people and Persians, and of course Christians and Jews.
All right, check out Jonathan's website, genesis123.co or solutionsforpeaceingaza.com, and you can get a lot of information there and certainly get a copy of the book, Israel the Miracle. It is an inspiring read. Thank you, Jonathan. God bless you, my friend. Stay in the fight. We look forward to many visits.
Look forward to it as well. God bless.
You too.